Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I asked you guys on Instagram what you wanted to learn how to paint, and so many of you said a cat, so that is exactly what I'm going to show you how to do today. Before we can paint a cat, we have to learn how to draw a cat. So to begin, I've just drawn a circle for the head of the cat. And now I'm going to draw smaller circles within that larger circle for the eyes. I'm going to make these circles a little bit more cat eye shaped just by using my pencil and creating sort of a more teardrop shape towards the inner corner. Just imagine that you're drawing eyeliner on the eyeball of the cat, and that usually turns out pretty good. I'm going to do the same for the other side, creating that slight tip on the inner corner. And then I'm going to create the pupils of the eyes. They're more like slits, depending on the light that your cat is sitting in. In this case, they're just kind of long diamond-shaped slits. Now we'll move on to the nose. The nose is sort of a upside-down triangle shape. So I'm just going to roughly sketch in an upside-down triangle. It does have a little bit of a bend at the top, sort of slightly heart-shaped, but not completely. And then the nostrils here, I'm just going to sketch those in. And then I'll just use my pencil to define some of the edges a little bit and make it a little less triangle-y. Triangle-y, is that a word? Probably not, but we're gonna go with it. Moving on to the mouth, you're just going to draw a vertical line from the nose down to where the mouth begins. And the top of a cat's mouth kind of goes in a mountaintop little shape. It also helps if you imagine the cheeks as circles that I'm demonstrating right here. So if you imagine these two little circular cheeks, it will help you sort of form the mouth around those. For the chin, I'm just gonna put in a little indication of a chin right here. And then I'll move on to shaping the face. So we don't want to keep the entire circular shape that we did before. We do want to sort of mold that a little bit more to the actual shape of a cat face. So I'm only going to use that circle as a guide. And I'm just going to keep in mind sort of where the cheekbones go and how they are a little bit more indented than the rest of the face. And then I want to think about where the ears are going to go. So the ears kind of sprout diagonally out from where you've placed the eyeballs. So you can see if I were to draw a diagonal line from the corner of that eyeball on the right-hand side, that's where that first ear is going to start. And then the other edge of the ear is going to end somewhere near the corner of the eye if you were to draw a diagonal line outwards as well. And then you're just going to do the exact same thing on the other side. You can also just lightly mark in where you want some of the cat's markings to go. I just kind of scribbled on a few lines here. We are going to transfer this onto watercolor paper, so the sketch isn't super important that it's crazy detailed or anything. I've just added in some whiskers, and then I'll get started on the body. So for the body, I'm going to imagine it as a big oval. If you guys happened to watch my how to draw a dog tutorial, I'll put a card above so you can check that out. But I basically go through how to pick out different shapes in your animal. And I work with a lot of circles and different just basic geometric shapes to create different animals, in that case a dog, but that process can be used for literally any animal. So definitely check out that video if you want to kind of get better at drawing animals in general. So you can see here, I've just kind of molded that oval to be how I want it to be. I've extended the back end a little bit so that it looks like the kitty is sitting, and I've added in a couple little legs. Now I'm just gonna go through with my eraser and just erase all of those initial guidelines that I made just using the basic shapes. So those tips should help you draw your own little kitty cat. Now we can move on to transferring it onto the watercolor paper. I actually also have a video all about transferring artwork to your watercolor paper using different methods, so I'll also include a card above for that as well. But right now I'm just using a light board, and I've quickly just traced that using colored pencil onto my watercolor paper. I decided that I want this kitty to be gray. I'm actually using a reference photo from Instagram. If I can find it, I will link it below. This is somebody's cat. I don't know whose, but it's somebody's. So for gray, I'm just using a really diluted mix of lamp black. And I'm just really roughly putting that on all over the cat just to get that base layer down. And then with a darker shade of the lamp black, I'm just going in and adding some of those darker details. So I'm just really roughly deciding where I want these dark areas to go. And I'm not being super precise with it. I'm just kind of getting the color on there for now. These are just going to be the base layers, you guys. So the more layers we do, the more detailed it's actually going to get. So the insides of the ears were one that I wanted darker, of course, around the head there where the shadow from the neck is going to be. Also the corners of the eyes. And any markings that you want your cat to have, you can definitely darken some of those areas as well. I have done this in somewhat of a wet on wet technique. My paint previously, the first layer that I did was kind of damp. So that's why you get some of those darker color blends happening. So it looks like the darker colors kind of blended in with the lighter color now. So yeah, that just kind of gives a little bit more softness to the piece when you do it wet on wet. Now I'm just going in wet on dry, meaning the entire piece was dry before I started adding even darker shades. And I am just going in and adding some of those darker areas once again. I wanted a couple markings on the top of his head here, and again, darkening some of the areas that are the darkest darks. You can definitely use a reference photo for this part. It will help you sort of determine where some of the darker areas go and any markings that you want your cat to have. So I'm just going to dry that completely using my hair dryer. And now I'm going to work on some of the eyeballs. Not some of the eyeballs, both of the eyeballs. I have mixed up an orange shade with a little bit of a brown to kind of get this amber colored eyeball. And I'm using a number 0 brush, and I'm just kind of painting that directly onto the circular eyeballs that we sketched out previously. For the nose, I'm using the same shade that I used previously because this cat, it has a gray nose as well. And then I'm going to continue using that little number 0 brush to outline some of the details, such as the mouth, and then later around the eyeballs, and also some of the markings as well. You can see throughout this piece that I wasn't really too concerned with being too specific about where the markings went and how the fur looked. I just sort of used the tip of my brush to kind of splash the color on wherever I wanted it to go. And I think that's kind of the beauty of using watercolor, because you can color in an object and have it just look so good when it's finished. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be precise. It just looks good. All right, so I'm still using that little brush, and I'm just adding in some little hairs or fur indications with a little bit of a darker mix. Again, I'm just being really quick with my brush strokes here. My focus is just getting the color on and making indications of where some of the darker areas are, and just indications of the fur in general. Using the lamp black, I'm just going to define those eyeballs a little bit more. So kind of like I said in the sketch portion, just imagine that you're drawing eyeliner on your cat. Like, you know how you create a cat eye effect using eyeliner? Just do that on your cat. I'm also going to darken the inner corners a little bit here, just to kind of give that whole cat eye effect a little bit more. And I'm just going to define the nose a little bit more too. So I did paint the nostrils using the black, and then I've just added a little bit more detail with that same brush. So once again, I'm just going around, and when my paper starts to dry a little bit, I go back in and I start to darken some of the areas once again. It's basically just an ongoing process of darkening areas and adding in little bits of detail at a time. I wanted the feet and the bottom to sort of fade out, so I wasn't going to paint those in. I wanted it to kind of be like emerging from the paper and not just sitting on it, if that makes sense. I've switched back to my larger brush and I'm just going in and adding some much darker details here to help define the body a little bit more, and then the ears a little bit more, and the rest of the face. I also wanted to add a little bit of shadow to the eyeballs and the inside of the eyes, so I did take a light mix of the darker brown that I used for the eyes, and I kind of applied that around the inside of the eyeballs. Now I'm just creating those little dots that the whiskers come out of with my small brush, and then I'm creating those elongated diamonds for the center pupils. Once everything is completely dry, you can erase the pencil lines. And finally, we're going to finish the piece with some white gouache. Adding the highlights is really going to make it pop. Even just now adding these spots to the eyeballs, it makes them look marble-like and more three-dimensional. So I just added those, and then I'm going to highlight a little bit around the eyes as well. Also, some of the hairs that kind of stick out inside of the ears, they're going to have highlights on them as well. And then some of the whiskers on this side are going to be highlighted, so I'm just taking the white on my really thin brush and I'm really lightly drawing in some whiskers. So just continue adding highlights wherever you think your kitty needs them. You can add a couple to some of the fur on the face. Again, if your cat has markings or white markings even, you can use the white gouache to really make those stand out as well. If you don't have white gouache, you can also just use a white gel pen. And to finish off the piece, I've just taken a little bit more black and I'm just going to darken a couple more areas that I think needed a little bit more finishing. So there's the final kitty cat. I hope you guys liked the tutorial. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up. I'm also going to include a sketch of this piece on my Patreon page. If you guys have not signed up yet for my Patreon page, you can get exclusive videos like this one. I painted this portrait recently just for my Patreon subscribers. I will leave a link below so you can check it out. I would love to have you there, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.